Kristina Glascock, we are in your office now. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming to Twin Falls. And sorry you got stuck on the bridge.
Okay, for anybody who's never been here, that is the most beautiful view ever. And in fact, there was an accident on the bridge, so it took me like an extra 45 minutes. And then as I'm going over the bridge, I'm like, gosh, there's an accident. Wow, look at that view. And I almost hit the car in front of me.
Yeah, it's a $1 million view. It's so amazing.
Is that how much the insurance is it's like roughly $1 million in accidents?
And we need another bridge, so, you know.
It's wild. By the way, what is in the valley? Like, what is that?
It's just all rock. It's the canyon. It's all canyon. There's golf courses down there.
It's like
we've got parks down there.
Area.
You can kayak. You can golf. Lots of trails, biking, anything you want to do.
Yeah, this is where like you realize people aren't wrong for moving here. It's just annoying that now they see it.
They've discovered the beauty. But when you're trying to get across and there's a wreck, then you have issues. But we have a lot of people come here just to jump off the bridge. So you have to
bungee
base
jumping?
jump. Base jump
I thought you meant suicide. I was like, oh my God. Let's not talk about that today, please.
No, base jumping. So
awesome. Well, listen, I know it's a working day for you, and I caught you in the middle of it, and I got screwed up with timing, but you had a really interesting experience that I've heard about people having, but I wanted to chat with you about it because obviously with our election system nationally, pretty much since forever, people have been denying election results. But since really 2020, there's been an uptick in people that have taken it upon themselves to kind of travel around the country and in a somewhat amateur manner, advocate for different election policies state to state. Now that to me is interesting because I've gone to Utah and talked elections, and I've also gone to Wyoming, and Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming, we have 3 different election systems, right? Like we have specific nuances to our state. We have obviously things that we have in common, but each state kind of handles things differently, and each state has different constitutional mandates and requirements. But you have people that have started going around the country advocating for like this, just like these are the 10 commandments of election that everybody should engage in. And some of those, like, again, I know you had this interaction with one particular individual. I really want to know what he said because he came around the Meridian area as well, and was kind of talking across Idaho. I wasn't able to meet with him in person, but again, like, what are people like him advocating for, and like, how does that fit in the Idaho plan?
Well, one thing was having all the ballots hand counted, and we know that in Idaho, we don't need to be hand counting ballots. If you start hand counting ballots, you introduce errors, you don't get election results, that the equipment that we use to count ballots is certified federally by the state, and then we are able to use it to accurately count the ballots and get results on election night.
So the hand counting thing, somebody told me recently that they were worried one of the errors or potential weak aspects of Ada County elections is what he's actually running for an office. I'm like, okay, great. So I'm chatting with this guy and he's like, well, look, you could have somebody who's appointed as like an elections judge, or you could have people that come in that are of a particular leaning, be that conservative or liberal, irrelevant which one. He's like, but every person you insert, you potentially insert another personality and another agenda along with that person, right? And I immediately was thinking about like, okay, well with hand counting, you would, first off, you would need a huge number of people, right? Like you'd need hundreds of volunteers or paid individuals. And from that, you would also be inserting all of those people's preferences and feelings on the election results.
Right. And I think in asking for all these people, it needs to be coming from an official. If it's ever mandated that we have to hand count ballots, it needs to be the county clerk who is in charge of administering elections to seek out those people to do the hand counting. It's not a group of people over here on the side trying to recruit people to hand count ballots, because then you're getting people that are being influenced on how the results should be. And so that was,
That seems like a pretty classic one. So I may have told you this. I did SAT prep like back in the day before I moved to Idaho. And overwhelmingly, you see people make mistakes on the most rudimentary problems. They'll be like 3 + 4 is 8, or like they'll think 3 + 4 and they'll think 12. They're like, no, you're not multiplying, you're adding. And they're like, oh shoot, yeah. So just small, innocent mistakes, but at scale over a long enough period of time on just an SAT test, which has fewer than 100 questions on basic math, you acquire a lot of mistakes, right? Like you could have 10 mistakes out of 70 questions. That's not uncommon.
Yeah, and the machines don't do that. The machines count 100% accurately, and we do test decks. We test the equipment. We test the ballots going through. We know what the end result should be. When we are doing our testing, we do public testing of the counting equipment. So we know how the results should be from those test decks, and they're spot on 100% of the time. The machines are not connected to the internet. There's no, I got asked the question, well, do your machines get viruses? Well, no, they don't get viruses. They're not connected to the internet. You know, we use certain procedures with the thumb drives that we have to use. It won't recognize them if we don't wipe the thumb drives every time we use them. We have all these procedures in place where somebody thinks that something could happen, but they're not familiar with every single process that we have in place to keep everything secure.
Sure. You're familiar with the Apollo 13 film, right? Tom Hanks. My oldest found it. I like watching trash sci-fi, and he found it the other day. So like last week we were watching Apollo 13, and there's the scene in Apollo 13 where they're trying to input the essentially data into the navigation computer so they can make a successful re-entry. And Tom Hanks has been up for like 5 days. They're freezing cold, and he's like doing all this math by hand. And then he's like, "Hey, you guys need to check my work." And everybody's there with like the slide rules and Houston and man, my hands were sweating. Like it's a really good film, obviously, but it was one of those things where it's like, God, the potential for error in any of these things has catastrophic consequences. And then, it's just like the more human fingers you have on even basic calculations and counting, the more potential you have for mistakes.
Right.
And it's like,
Right.
it's brutal.
So
yeah. Okay, so hand counting was one.
We're fortunate to be here in Idaho, and I think the other thing is the Idaho legislature has put administration of elections under the county clerks, and so we're not. One of the things was, well, we need to give the elections back to the citizens. No, by the Constitution and the Idaho statute, the administration of elections is under the county clerk to administer these elections and to carry out the statutes that are required for us in administering elections, insomuch that the legislature put every single taxing district election under the county clerk so that we didn't have schools running their own elections or library districts or highway districts. It's all administered uniformly through the county clerk. And so when you start taking, well, we got to give the elections back to the citizens, do you really want to not know when your election dates are? Do you want to just have random election dates? But in the past they could do that. Before they put consolidated elections under the county clerks, taxing districts were running their own elections.
Wait, how long ago was that?
In 2010 legislative session was when it changed, and then 2011 is when all of the taxing districts elections were put under the county clerk.
Okay, my apologies for and again, I learned okay. So if you take my area, okay, I live in Ada County. So before 2011, when they consolidated all the elections, I have something like 12 taxing districts. So you'd have mosquito or pest abatement, you'd have sewer, you'd have, West Ada School District, you'd have the city, you'd have the county, and they would literally run elections however they decided to run them on whatever day they decided to run them.
The county clerk was just running your primary and your general elections was what the county clerk was doing up until that point.
Oh my gosh.
And
what a train wreck that would be.
And schools could have them, their elections any date that they, wanted to have them. So under consolidated elections, the legislature at that time picked 4 election dates a year that we could hold elections. Now we're down to 2 election dates a year. May and November every year is the only dates that elections are held. So it's uniform throughout the state of Idaho.
Okay, here's a question though, from like a philosophical conflict. when people say we need to give the elections back to the people, or if somebody's saying that, and as an articulation that they shouldn't be run by the county clerk, aren't you elected by the people?
I am.
So it's essentially like the people are like, okay, if we had to run elections, who would we like to run our elections? They're like, let's pick Kristina. So we have in that sense a very real direct connection to me, Matt, as an Ada County citizen. I can decide if I like my county clerk, Trent Triple, and I want him to be running my elections, or I can, I can personally run to be county clerk to run the elections, or I can, campaign with somebody else. But in that way, like, you wouldn't have, if you gave the elections, quote, back to the people, you'd have like 300,000 people saying like, okay, am I running it? Or are you running it? And inevitably they'd like,
have mass chaos.
let's just get one person to run it. Like, can we all agree on just one person? It's like, well, we can't all agree on one person. You think this person, I think, why don't we do an election? And then we like elect one person and be like, that's the person, right? The majority of us picked this person, and this person's gonna run our elections because we, the people, have selected them. And that's Trent Triple, and that's you.
Yes.
Like, we already have that.
Yes. Yes.
Wait, so what was his iteration? What was this person's iteration of giving it to the people? What does that even mean?
I have no idea.
Okay,
no
awesome.
idea. Go to the city park and have an election at the city park or wherever you want to hold an election.
What if it's raining?
Yeah, or rain. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Okay.
and I kind of think of the caucuses that the parties administer.
Sure.
Just the chaos with that, people needing to, where do I go? You're going to take, in Twin Falls, we had 2 locations. Well, how do I know which location do I go to? How long do I have to stand in line? What is the process? Everything was different, and you don't have very good turnout. You have chaos, things like that.
Sure. You have even lower participation because every degree of confusion or potential
I think
confusion.
we have like 6% turnout, Yeah. So
right.
you just-
And if I were to steelman his argument, it sounds like the idea is we are too far as citizens removed from our election process. Like, we have the Secretary of State and he's the chief election guy, but like the Secretary of State doesn't know me, and I want to be in charge of my elections. But inevitably, what would ultimately happen in a large enough population is like, okay, well then there are too many of us, let's just elect one person.
Yeah.
So do people just not know that that's the relationship with the county clerk?
Probably not. Probably not. They're not educated enough to know that that it's laid out by the Constitution, by the state of Idaho, that the county clerk is your chief elections officer for the county. So
Okay, so hand counting, give the elections back to the people. What else?
get rid of the electronics. We go back to paper everything, and we've been there. We've been in the paper world before electronics come along. I've done the paper world. Now I'm to the electronic world, and let me tell you, elections are a lot safer and more secure in the electronic world than they are in the paper world. When we had paper poll books, people could come in, and the poll book had to be updated to show that they'd already early voted or absentee voted. Now we know within the electronic world, we know that person has already received a ballot.
Okay, my apologies for my ignorance again. When you say paper poll books, so essentially, like, say there are 10,000, how many registered voters are there?
We have about 40,000.
Okay, so you have 40,000 registered voters, and then how many different polling locations do you have?
We have over 20 polling places.
Okay, so let's
40
say...
and over 40 precincts. So
Okay, so let's say 2,000 people per polling location. And so what you would do back in the day before electronics is you'd say like, okay, Brian's supposed to go to this location, okay? And everyone else that's going to that location along with Brian, we're gonna print out a book and deliver it to that polling location.
And we had to start printing those books weeks before the election to allow enough time to get them assembled and printed, and and people were still absentee voting and early voting and things like that. So it was out of date. As soon as we printed it, it's out of date.
No.
Yeah, but it took that long. And then we're running lists out on election day and the day before to get those paper poll books updated. Yeah.
So this is this is one of the large problems with, like, we do have absentee voting, we do have early voting, we do have in-person voting, and if you combine all of these things together, then you need a flexible, like, very easy to update database of who has received a ballot, who has cast a ballot, whose vote has already been,
recorded.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
because a lot of people, when we start mailing out ballots, it's 45 days before an election. They vote their ballot, then election day rolls around and they're like, I wonder what's, think it's a different election maybe, or what, so they come in and it's like, nope, you've already voted.
Right.
45 days ago when we started mailing out ballots. We've had that confusion with voters. Enough time has lapsed that they're not sure that it's the same election. They think it's something different. So,
or what do you do if, like in that situation, if somebody gets the absentee ballot and then forgets to vote, and then it's election day, and they're like, "Oh, I forgot to vote. I'll just go into my polling location."
and we can tell whether we've received their absentee ballot, and if we
You
haven't
can tell
received
now.
it, yes, now we can, and they're able to vote at their polling place.
What did you do before?
You couldn't. You really, it was difficult to administer with those paper poll books and updating the list, whether we got it back. I couldn't communicate with those polling places if they say they drop it off their absentee ballot and also went to their polling place on election day. We didn't have that communication with the tech, and now with the technology, all of our equipment's communicating, so we're able to update those polling places to let them know electronically that person has already turned in their absentee ballot.
Times. Okay, so give it back to the people. Everything on paper,
Yeah, get rid of the
and
paper.
then
Yeah.
hand count everything. What else do we have?
Well, we have a statewide voter registration system, and that is all set out by code, that the voter rolls are updated in each county, but we have a statewide system. So if somebody registers in Ada County and they move to Twin Falls County, I can pull that person in the system out of Ada County and move them to Twin Falls so that they're not in the roll twice.
Got it. So as they register here, you scrub for the rest of the stuff.
We're
does
able to,
Brian show up anywhere else? And you're like, oh, he's over here in Ada
So
County.
you can't be registered in 44 counties. You can't request an absentee ballot in 44 counties. So you're in there once, basically, in the statewide voter registration system.
And you find that when they come to register with you specifically, right? So it's not like somebody moved. Like if I moved to Twin and failed to register, you wouldn't be pulling me anywhere because I haven't registered to vote. Now, if this is my primary residence, I'm still registered in Ada County, and I tried to vote in Ada County, I may be able to sneak that through. But if they find out that my permanent residency is here, or I go to register here, and you say like, okay, when did you move? And they're like, oh, well, I moved in April. And they're like, okay, but you voted in Ada in May. Like that's the nature of some of the prosecution going on in the state right now, where people attempted to vote in counties they weren't permanent residents in, even though they were able to register. Gotcha.
Yeah. So that was one of the things where the county should be able to take back over the voter registration, and you don't want 44 different voter registration systems. You want a statewide system so that you're able to track voters throughout the state.
Gotcha.
And then we're also able to let other states know when we get registrations in, people coming in from other states, we're able to let those states know that they've registered here in Idaho.
Gotcha.
So
Okay, so those are 4 pretty good ones. What else do you got? Any other good ones?
Let's see what else. If I have anything else.
And again, that the nature of, as you're saying, that the whole issue is not just the burden of having 44 different counties with 44 different voter registration mechanisms, but it's the centralized nature of like, look, if Secretary of State Phil McGrain holds the ball with all of this, then everybody can manipulate and cross-reference it very easily. And in the absence of that, because I get worried sometimes about like data breaches, right? Like number of emails where they're like, hey, did you buy something at Home Depot from like 2000 to 2020? It's like, yeah, man, I bought some stuff at Home Depot. They're like, well, now everybody has your birth certificate. I'm like, oh God. So like I get really frustrated with that accumulated data source. But in this case, it's like, that's the only way to make sure this is going to work.
Right. And with having it this way, the Secretary of State's office is able to work with Idaho Transportation Department. They're able to work with Homeland Security in checking to making sure that when we enter someone that is an actual person with an actual driver's license, because we're entering their driver's license number, so we're able to check with Idaho Transportation Department. Is this data matching? Do you have a driver's license for this person with this name, this date of birth? So we're checking all of that. And we're also making sure that if we have to enter a social security number, that person actually that matches that person's social. And then to go even further, is that person a citizen? So now we're able to know if they're a citizen of the United States with all the data sharing that we're able to do with these state agencies and federal agencies. So we know if we have people in our system that are not citizens.
Okay, this is actually a question that I've been wondering. And I knew it was loosely tied to ITD, because ITD is the one that issues driver's licenses,
Right.
and you can get a driver's license under very specific circumstances if you're on like a specific work
Right.
visa or something of that nature. But they know, they're like, we're issuing this license, but we also know you're not a citizen.
Correct.
And then if somebody tries, what happens if I am here on like an ag visa and I legally get a driver's license? I'm not saying I'm a citizen, but then I'm like, I wonder if I could vote. What happens if I come to you with a driver's license? Is there a physical marking on it? Like it doesn't
So
have the star?
They've
Or?
started putting U.S. citizen on the driver's license, but before that, you wouldn't know. So it's after the election that we're able to scrub that data and see, okay, who voted that's not a citizen? Does somebody register because they've got that
Sure.
Idaho driver's license? Does
The
somebody,
old one, not
Yes.
the new one that
Right.
has a U.S.
Yeah.
citizen on it. Okay.
Were they able to do that? And then we know that that they're not a citizen. So then we start the investigation process to contact these individuals. And probably about 99% of the time, they've got their citizenship. They didn't go back into ITD, to the driver's license bureau, and prove to them, I now have my citizenship, and get reissued a new driver's license.
So they are in fact a
So
citizen. They just had
most of the time that we've had these investigated, but now that we have access to better data and things like that,
Sure.
we're able to identify those that are not citizens. And the Secretary of State has been working with the Attorney General's office, and they're handling those investigations now. If somebody is not a citizen and they are voting, so those
Gotcha.
people are being prosecuted and investigated. So we know,
Yeah.
we know whether you're here as a citizen
Or not.
or you're just here and got an ID card or a driver's license.
One last question, because again, I know your time's short today. If somebody attempts to vote with a legally issued driver's license but isn't a citizen, are you able to scrub those votes before are they counted officially?
They would be counted.
And then you would go back through and say, okay.
It would depend on, because the investigation period takes some time, so you'd have to look at, did that influence the results of the election? Was there wide enough margin between the winner and the loser, or the yes and the no votes? Would that have changed the outcome of the election? And then a new election could be ordered.
So and again, to be clear, you're like, look, it would initially be counted, but then there would be an automatic scrubbing process that would take place. And in the event that you identify somebody who voted inappropriately, illegally, then you say, okay, this is, Brian. Brian voted illegally, okay? Now, let's figure out where Brian voted. And if you go back to the actual election, you're like, okay, the margins here, there was only one person who did this, and the margins here are like 200.
Right.
Okay. Well, then, we're not happy that Brian voted, but we do know with confidence that it did not affect the outcome of this election. Or you go back and you're like, oh, wait a minute. This was an election that was won only by like 1 or 2 votes. We can either order a new election, or just essentially figure out.
We go to court. We petition the court to order a new election.
Gotcha. So even in the event that it is counted and it appears that it is possible that it did affect the election, you then do not leave it there. You're like, no, we are going to do another one because there was tampering with this election.
Right.
So you still have confidence that the people elected, even if there is manipulation, is effective. Sorry about that.
Yeah. so that it just gives us another tool in our toolbox to make sure that only citizens are voting. You know, in the last November election, we had 2 individuals that I can talk about now because they have since been prosecuted. They were on felony probation. They registered and voted. And your rights are not restored for voting as long as you're serving probation. Until your probation's over, your rights haven't been restored.
Gotcha.
So we're getting pretty good at detecting these and then turning them over to law enforcement to be investigated, and then it's up to the prosecutor to file charges.
Gotcha.
So we do have 2 individuals from last November, and so it takes time. You can see that they're just now being. It's almost a year later. They're just now being prosecuted.
Gotcha. I'm still blown away that we're now starting to put U.S. citizen on the driver's license. So this anxiety about like, well, we have people that are here, maybe they're here legally, but they're not legal citizens to vote. We now have that like obvious check and balance. So whoever takes their identification for registering to vote, they're like, it doesn't say U.S. citizen, man. Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
That's
so
wild.
that's going to take time for all those driver's licenses and
sure, a bunch of cycles.
And for those to get updated and for the system, for them to collect the data that they are a citizen to print that on your driver's license. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
I just recently got a new driver's license. I should check it. It should
probably
say US
doesn't
citizen.
unless you had some document, unless you had provided your passport, something to show.
I have the star card or something.
Yeah.
Like,
So
it
look
should
and
be
see.
on there somewhere.
Does it say U.S. citizen at the bottom?
At the bottom? No, it doesn't. Man, I must have missed it. Oh, that's kind of cool. So it becomes like a mini passport then.
Yeah, you got your star card. Yeah, it'll show your.
Yeah.
so the next time you go in, ask them.
Dude.
Provide the document,
Yeah.
and then they can print that right on there.
I
that you're a citizen.
had the director of the DMV on a few months back. I should ask her to come back on because I'd love to understand like, okay, this is the new template of the driver's license.
Yeah.
So like everybody, we're gonna know. That'd be a wild one. Anyway, listen, I know you're crunch time. Anything else here at the end?
No.
Okay.
No. I just appreciate you coming to Twin Falls and
course.
helping us get the word out on how elections are ran in Idaho and why we do the things we do to protect the vote and make sure people are confident in what we're doing and they get out and vote. The turnout will be extremely low next week. But these are really important things that are going to be on the ballot.
You're like, it's going to be low. I know it's going to be low.
Yeah, well, compared to, last November,
Sure.
we're not going to have the 70 to 80%. We'll be lucky if we're, single digit, maybe in the teens, for turnout.
People just don't care as much.
These are local elections. People need to really come out and participate.
Yeah. Well, thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for taking the time to explain this, and we'll have to do it again.
Okay, thanks for having me.